Welcome to Storm and Chocolate. I'm Storm and Norman.
Wait, why do you look so old?
Oh, I forgot to put on my stage makeup.
Well, come on, do it.
Okay, hang on a second. So let's start over. Welcome to Storm and Norman. Welcome to Storm and Chocolate. I'm Storm and Norman. This week, we start the new series of the next 20 or so songs. We finished the first 14. Today we're doing song 15, which is Slave to Love from Bryan Ferry and his solo album, Boys and Girls. Boys and Girls is actually Bryan Ferry's 6th solo album, but of significance, this was his first solo album after the dissolution of Roxy Music, the band he started in 1970 with bassist Graham Simpson. Roxy Music released 8 studio albums from 1972 through 1982, with Bryan being the main singer and the principal songwriter of the group. So that's about all I'm going to go into the history of Roxy Music, because this is a song from a solo album of Bryan Ferry's. But I will talk about the history of Roxy Music when I get to the song Avalon from their final album from 1982. That said, Boys and Girls continues the arc of the last 3 Roxy Music albums, which are Manifesto, Flesh and Blood, and Avalon. Manifesto was kind of the pivot point from being unpredictable music to being more predictable, being more lush, and also being, some might say, overproduced when we got to Avalon. So Boys and Girls, with Bryan's voice and his songwriting skills, sounds a lot like Avalon. And outside of the main singles from the 2 albums, which are More Than This and Avalon, Slave to Love, and Don't Stop the Dance, the rest of the songs on there could come from either album. So I have difficulty pinpointing where they're coming from, similarly to the way that the songs on the Eagles' Hotel California and The Long Run, outside of the hits and the singles from those albums, I don't really pinpoint them because I heard them mostly at the same time as I talked about in The Last Resort. So at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter. The songs are beautiful and lush, and Bryan's voice is dreamy. So over time, Bryan perfected the what I call continental suave persona, not just British suave, but also the French sexiness and the Latin lover, all meshed into one, and he's always looked very dapper and very handsome. Now, this persona is actually played against in the video for this particular song, and we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. The solo album has no Roxy members. However, Roxy Music was pared down to just 3 members towards the end on Avalon, with Bryan on vocals mainly, Phil Manzanera on guitar, and Andy Mackay mainly on sax, but occasionally on oboe. That said, some of the additional personnel on Avalon actually made it onto Bryan's solo album. For example, we had Andy Newmark on drums, Alan Spenner on bass, and Neil Hubbard on guitar. And actually, the credited musicians on Boys and Girls actually sounds like a who's who of British superstar musicians, including David Gilmour and Mark Knopfler. At its heart, pun intended, Slave to Love is a love song, more so than Meadows is a breakup song. The first 2 verses describe, very poetically, the ache of love when it's unrequited. Bryan is singing about a man's needs and wants and his state of mind when he's falling in love. The first lines of the first verse show how locked in he is to his feelings, and they go like this. Already we get how taxing this is, how much mind share it's taking. And he explains further in a you know how I feel kind of way. Yes, love takes a lot out of you. And as the chorus says, it will make you a slave to love. And that's the chorus. That's all there is. Just a slave to love. So the second verse changes from talking to a friend to talking to her. So he starts speaking to her directly. Specifically, he talks about a torrid romance, and he's looking for either confirmation or perhaps a commitment from his prospective partner. But still, there's some uncertainty in his voice, but at the end, the last verse brings it all home. The first lines of the third and final verse start with these lines.
The storm is breaking, so it seems, with a young Teresa, too grown up to dream. And the spring is
So he's received some positive signals back from his prospective girlfriend, and then he opines on their similarities. The line, too young to reason, too grown up to dream, is kind of how I felt a lot about my life. I don't feel like I've ever really grown up. I'm not too serious most of the time, and when I do have to delve into seriousness, I always try to get back to the fun and unpredictable and hilarity. Almost got through it.
Jocularity?
Almost, no. I am funny most of the time, and if I ever have to be serious, then I try to revert very quickly to my normal persona. And then finally we get these last two lines.
and the spring is turning. Your face to mine. I can hear your laughter. I can see your smile.
So in the end, it's a very satisfying ending to the song. At the beginning, he's talking about the ache of love, and then at the end, he's fallen in love and he's gotten some good responses back from his prospective partner. And the video for this song, let me tell you about the video. As I said before, Brian has this very suave persona of the international superstar and perhaps Latin lover, and the video actually plays against that because it's got a surprising end. What we see at the beginning is Brian is arriving at an airport in a private jet. There's a bunch of paparazzi who are waiting at the airport because they've gotten word that he's arriving, and there's 3 or 4 of them waiting there, and they've all got cameras. And as soon as he steps off the plane, they're snapping pictures at him and trying to get, the shots that they live for. And then he's rushed off into a limousine and he starts driving through town. And through this drive, he is constantly reminded of lovers that are in the environment around him. There's a couple in a car next to his in the limo, and he rolls down the window to get a little fresh air. And we see them start to make out at the red light, and then, as soon as the light goes green, he goes through it. And then he stops off in a bar, and he has a drink on his way home. And it's a kind of a cabaret scene where there's a bit of a show on stage, but there's also a couple dancing languidly over here, and it's very sensual in their movements. And of course, the song is very sensual, so it matches the mood. And then finally, Brian makes it home, and we see the paparazzi sneaking into his house, tiptoeing across because they want to get that photo of a lifetime, more so than their regular pay is worth. And as they're coming in and sneaking around, they come to see Brian. He's in a bedroom, and he's singing again because he sings the song, but he's singing to a female in bed. And the paparazzi come in and they look at the scene and they're going, oh no, we can't take a picture of this. This is not something for us. And you're kind of confused. You're wondering what's going on. And so they kind of back out of the room, back out of the house and take off. And then what we see is Brian is actually singing to a young girl, presumably his daughter, and he's singing that last part. And so the song kind of changes from a man-woman kind of love song to a father-daughter kind of thing, and it's very beautiful. So he's actually singing to his daughter, and the song has changed from him talking about love between a man and a woman to actually talking about the love for his child. And it's very charming and it's very beautiful and very moving. So we go back to the paparazzi who are leaving, and they're outside now. They're going through an arch. And one funny thing happens is that there's 3 of them, and then the paparazzo in the front turns around to the other one and starts snapping his camera at him, and then the other two in the back start snapping cameras at each other, and there's flashes going off, and it's kind of a dog-eat-dog world. So that's kind of fun. It's kind of like the life or the image that we have of paparazzi just being camera demons. So lending to the sensual nature of the video, it's full of models. There are 3 or 4 models, maybe 5 female models inside. There is one named Laurence Triel, I believe, who is also in the other 2 videos from the album, which are Don't Stop the Dance and Windswept. And there's also a Swedish model, a blonde, and she's just stunning. Her name is Caroline Bergström, and she sings the first verse. She lip syncs to that, and it's because she's so beautiful, because she's stunning. It's very almost disturbing hearing Brian's voice coming out of her lips, but it just leads to the beauty of the video. So that's it for Slave to Love from Bryan Ferry's 6th solo album, Boys and Girls. Next time, we'll see what happens when the lady smiles in her golden earrings. We'll see you then. Bye-bye. Slave to Love by Bryan Ferry from his
No, stop that. You said brain fairy.